right, ladies and gentlemen of the Heavy Metal History Podcast, I have a very special guest here. We have Zak Vargas from the band Elesia, vocalist. And Zak, welcome to the podcast, man. Thank you for taking the time to do this, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird timing. You guys are about to re-release and repress, I guess, your album
Mhm.
Masochist. Kind of crazy. It's been 18 years. Before we get into all that, that's what we're here to talk about for the most part. But the thing that I like to start with guests on the podcast, man, tell me a little bit about your personal heavy metal history. You know, those bands and records that you remember hearing that kind of got you into the genre, and maybe even wanted you to start doing a band yourself and everything like that.
Oh yeah. Um, I'm like one of those cases where I was kind of copying my older brother at first,
Mhm.
you know. So he started like getting into punk when we were like kids, or I was a kid. He was maybe like a preteen or something.
Yeah.
And so I was getting like I would listen to like those Punk-O-Rama comps from Epitaph, and we would go my mom would let us buy CDs at the Christian bookstore. So and so we would buy these like they're called songs from the penalty box, which I think was a solid state records like comp.
That, I think that sounds right. It's one of those bands.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, it was either them or Tooth
For
and Nail.
record. Yeah.
Yeah. Um I think that's kind of where I was like introduced to like heavier stuff because it was mostly just like fat records, punk and type shit that I liked. And then
Yep.
yeah, songs from the penalty box probably gave me like Zayo stuff like that would have been like the first kind of like metalcore and like hardcore things I was hearing.
I've always
Yeah.
been a big proponent of like punk rock as like a good gateway into metal because a lot of punk, kind of
Yeah.
influenced a lot of those early hardcore bands, man.
Yeah. I was always searching, I feel like, for the most extreme thing too. So I feel like going from punk into like hardcore and then into like metal is kind of just a natural path for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
There's
know?
certain, it takes a certain type, man, where like, you get into something and you're like, well, what's heavier than this? What's faster than this? What's
Yeah.
harder? And you just like, you never
That's
stop. You're
exactly.
always like searching for something. Even now, man, I'm like, I'm almost 40 and I'm still like, well, what's heavier than this last thing I heard last year, or, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And like, just keep,
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I remember do you remember that website that's called mp3.com?
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
found a lot of my
So
first bands and music too.
yeah, I remember it had like, you could find like the top plays of pretty like specific subgenres. I
Mhm.
remember clicking on doom metal and being like, "What the fuck is that? Doom metal? That sounds scary." And I think that was the first time I was like 14 years old and I heard Sun, and I
Oh, wow.
remembered legitimately being like, "This is scary music."
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, they're the way they like kind of get those like sonic. I can't even call them notes if I'm being honest. Like
yeah,
soundscape,
just
go soundscapes,
brown notes.
man. Yeah, that's a whole nother level of like doom metal. I listen to it occasionally, but I just don't understand it sometimes. I'm like, man, I don't know if I
Yeah,
have 45 minutes to listen to like one song.
yeah. I like background music for a lot of stuff I do. It's really helpful to have either like no vocals or just like indiscernible vocals,
Yeah.
for like reading and writing and stuff. I find it to be really like helpful. But uh yeah, yeah, I suppose that's my kind of metal background.
So you guys were all pretty young when you started the band, right? You were all like 16,
Yeah.
17-ish.
Well, no, I mean that's like the masochist age, but we probably started at
Wow.
like 14. Yeah.
Damn, dude.
It was like
Yeah.
maybe like freshman, sophomore-ish, like year of high school.
So were you all kind of like in the same friend group and like all knew each
Yeah.
other, and that's where like the impetus for everything started?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Alex, the guitar player on Masochist, and then Kevin, the drummer on Masochist. Us three were like best friends. And then we found two kids who were a grade below us. So actually, so we started as sophomores, and then the second guitar player and bass player were freshmen in our high school. Uh, Yeah, so it was all one high school, um, small group of friends who like went to shows. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, that's a pretty rare thing that I've kind of seen like over the years. There's like very few bands that were like they were really young kids when they started. And because like even before that, the most you
Mhm.
ever heard was like, I mean, way back in the 80s with I don't know why I'm blanking on their name right now, but that thrash band that had like a 17-year-old like vocalist or guitar player or something like that.
Mhm.
Bay Area dudes. I don't know why I'm blanking on their fucking name. Death Angel or something like that.
Oh, well, it's obviously not Metallica.
No, but they were pretty
There
young.
is,
Yeah.
there's like Testament was from NorCal.
Yeah. I
Um,
think it might be Death Angel, actually, now that I'm
Death
thinking
Angel.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's and I can't imagine like when I was that age, like trying to like do a full-time band. So like when you guys kind of started, like was it just like, hey, let's just have some fun and play some shows, and then you kind of found out like, oh shit, we have something like really people are responding to here and like carried it further.
Yeah, it was definitely to have fun and to like make our favorite band. Um, I think that's like the best reason to start a band is to
Yeah.
make your favorite band. Um, yeah, and it would like wasn't going well at first. I mean, we were having fun and stuff, and our friends would come to shows and we would just play really small stuff, but we weren't really getting any attention for a while until maybe we were graduating, or I guess around when Masochist came out, which was
It
'06. Yeah.
was MySpace, right? That kind of like helped with all that.
Oh yeah, it had to have. Yeah. Um, yeah, that was a huge tool for us.
Yeah, I mean that was such a golden era in music, I feel like, because there were so many bands that like for one reason or another either hit really hard and just kind of dropped off the map or like hit hard and then kept going after MySpace. But it really
Yeah.
did help bring a lot of bands like even nowadays you're seeing a lot of resurgence in like MySpace era bands like over the past couple of years, whether they're like getting back together or
Mm-hmm.
issuing stuff like you guys are doing. Um, I'm really curious because it's been like 18-ish years. I've been trying to like figure out like what that is that people are like responding to again. Maybe everybody got older. I'm kind of curious to hear your opinion on that of like why you think that that's what's going on.
Yeah, there's certainly like um, a crowd for it now. There's
Mhm.
young kids who have discovered it now who seem to appreciate it more. And I'd probably just say it's maybe a natural cycle of genres that all sorts of different subgenres experience, just kind of ups and downs. And
Yeah,
I think that kind of like my sport space deathcore thing got kind of tired for people.
right.
So I think a lot of the young bands um, kind of, I guess, took it back to its roots, and which is crazy to think that it's old enough to kind of to be seen that way, to be seen as like classic deathcore, you know. Um, but it is like 20 years old, so I guess that makes sense. Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was
there's
having a
new bands, yeah, that are kind of like labeling themselves as like MySpace or like classic deathcore. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I was having a fairly similar conversation where it was like like maybe not necessarily deathcore, but it was like along the metalcore lines. Like even that has had a big uptick, and I know there's not
yeah,
much difference between deathcore and metalcore in my opinion. There's still breakdowns, there's still melodies and like all that kind of stuff, but it is there's still like that little delineation and there's been like these upticks of bands who like are putting out stuff that sounds like it came from 2003 to 2006 and 2024 and it's like
yeah.
and it's popping off hard, I mean look at bands like Knock Loose and uh I don't know, I'm blanking on other boundaries, bands like that. It's
Mhm.
like those bands are blowing up because of that sound that's quote unquote like old now. Even though to us it's like it's not that old.
Yeah, Belmora, they're doing
Yeah.
old like kind of like at the gates metalcore kind of style. That was big before like predates deathcore and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not just deathcore. People are revisiting all sorts of like early aughts late 90s like metalcore style and stuff. It's cool to see like the label who did our tape, Force of Reckoning. He
Mhm.
like reissues a lot of that shit. And even the vinyl label, Secret Swarm, he did like Rifles at Recess, which were like a metalcore band we really liked in high school.
Dude, they're like a local band. I
Oh
live in
yeah.
Chattanooga. Yeah,
Wait, where at? Where's this
I live
at?
in Chattanooga, where they're from.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
sick.
yeah. I used to see them all the fucking time with my best friend's band with Faith or Flames. Like they just used to play every fucking weekend. I was like, yeah, this is rad. We're seeing Rifles at Recess and Faith or Flames.
Oh,
Like
really? Damn. I don't think I ever saw them. I don't know if they never came over here or if I was like too young or something.
they didn't tour a lot. I do remember that. Yeah, they because
Yeah.
they were. I don't know, man. They did that one record and like kind of got a like, huge pop, and then I don't remember that they did like a huge tour when I kind of knew them, but I could be wrong. That was a long time ago.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that's cool to know. I'm glad that there's labels out there because like my whole thing is like the historical aspect of everything. Like the fact that there's labels out there trying to like preserve that music and show it to a new generation. That's huge,
Yeah.
man. Because there are a
Yeah.
lot of bands
Totally.
like that like your band Rifles. I'm sure there's countless others I can name, but you guys put out one, two albums, three albums, and then like that's it. That's all we got.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's history for you, man. Sometimes it just happens, and I think that's the most interesting thing about like looking back on a lot of records and bands is like, well, let's figure out what happened. Where did they decide like, hey, this is what we want to do, or like, why did that one record get put out, and why is it so beloved in the scene and the fans and people who remember it that it still like kind of lives on 18 plus years
Yeah.
later.
Totally. Yeah.
So, okay, so let's go back a little bit. I know we kind of talked about this. Trying to remember things from long ago is like a little rough. Um, can you kind of take me back to when you guys first started writing for Masochist? Like, where were you guys at in terms of like age? What were you all
Yeah.
like? You knew that like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Like, we're gonna write this album. Like that's when you had the idea.
Yeah. We were 16 and 17 ish, like around
Okay.
there when making it, and had just put out, maybe not just, but our last release was the 2004 demo,
Mhm.
which was like 4 songs. And it was kind of where our sound was like introduced, where we started playing, I guess, deathcore.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we knew we were just going to take that sound like a little further um, on a full length album. The guitar player Alex was like really into death metal. Um, was probably actually even getting over like the core at that point, but I think knew that this was like the sound and style of the band. And plus the remaining members still wanted it to be like a hardcore band that plays like hardcore shows.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then probably wrote it really quickly actually. And then recorded it, like just did everything really quickly back then, I think just in general. Yeah.
So let's see. So okay, so you did everything pretty quickly. Did you guys like already have like these songs ready to go, or was it kind of like a hey, here's a riff I have? Did you guys kind of like collaboratively do it, or did you let Alex kind of like do his thing and he was like, yeah, this is what I have written. Let's kind of work around that.
He would like come into the practice. I almost called it a practice space, but it was just our drummer's garage at his parents' house.
Hey man, that's a practice space.
Yeah, like 10 minutes from school. So we would like get out of school and just go there every day. So
Damn.
um that probably helped accelerate like writing because we were just there every day, just like hanging out. Um I think like Alex would write riffs, kind of show us riffs. We would maybe collaborate on like mosh parts and stuff, but riffing was definitely Alex. Um, we kind of format together maybe a little bit, and then I'd write lyrics like afterwards typically.
Were you did you need to like make sure you had the whole song done to write lyrics, or could you do it like piece by piece when you got stuff?
Um, I think I would have like a rough drafts of like songs
Mhm.
and try to find like the one that like fits a particular song that we're writing best.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like rewrite it to like fit it in and stuff. Um, which I think I got better at as I got older. Because there's uh there's like a couple songs on Masochist that we like never played because I recorded too many vocals on them. And they just like I couldn't like perform them live. I think there's like this song Theocracy on there,
Yeah.
uh, where we never played it because I don't think I wrote those lyrics and like practiced them at practice. I think I had them written, and the first time I like did them was recording. Um, and that song has like endless amounts of vocals. There's like no vocal breaks on it or anything. And we never even tried. I was just like, yeah, I don't think we can play that song.
So you mean like you just keep, yeah, I mean I know what song you're talking about. So it's like the fact that you just like
Yeah,
keep screaming throughout the whole song and then you just can't like you don't have like the breath, I guess, to pull it off, or
yeah,
like I'm not a
yeah,
vocalist, so
yeah, probably.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's fucking
There's not enough
crazy.
like breaths in it.
But hey, you still pulled it off for the recording, so that's, I mean, that's something right there.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have like a couple songs that you can't play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just mean when trying to squeeze your lyrics like into a song, um, there were clearly like tracks where we I guess had more time to do that and think them out a little better. It was definitely like better to be able to write and then practice before recording. I think Theocracy and maybe one other track were kind of like not practiced. They were just like written and then recorded.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So actually, I'm gonna change up what I want to do here. If I were to bring up a track list here and we kind of went track by track, do you think you could kind of give me like a little run through of each song here of what
Oh
you
yeah.
remember?
Yeah. I'll probably remember it pretty well too because
Okay.
I wrote like extensive liner notes on the reissue um, about each song. So
Damn, that's
um,
awesome.
yeah. So it's cool to for folks to see. It was cool and fun to revisit and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of makes it a little fresher in my head. Although I did it like a year ago because that's kind of how long it's taken to like get this reissue going.
Yeah.
But yes, I should have a
Yeah.
good memory of everything.
That is definitely something I want to touch on for sure. But so yeah, let's do this, man. Let's kind of go through the tracks here. Let's start off with Masochist because Disgust is just like an intro track, basically, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a sound clip um,
Yeah, that's right.
from a film with Michael Keaton, I believe, called White Noise.
Oh, I
Uh,
remember the movie.
just, yeah. I don't remember if it's like good or
It's not very good.
yeah,
It's not
but I
very,
remember just like seeing that part. It really stuck out to me. There was probably like a period where every movie I was watching, I was like looking for sound clips. So I think that's just kind of how I found that.
that was
Uh,
a big thing around that time though, because of bands like
yeah,
Kill Me Dead and Black Rose Burial and a couple other bands that kind of
yeah,
like went with that thing. I loved it, but
yeah. And
can't
Killing Me Dead
imagine.
went all out on sound
Yeah,
clips.
yeah,
They were like our first real tour too. Was playing with them.
yeah. Yeah, I remember I
Yeah.
kind of know Matt from my years of touring too, and he would always
Oh,
talk
cool.
about you guys, and he was like, "Yeah, they're like one of my favorite bands to work with, and I love their stuff." I was like,
Oh,
"Dude, that's
cool.
sick."
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was like, fuck, I don't know, it was a long time ago for me. Anyways, digressing here a little bit. So yeah, Mascus. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the track.
So Maskus was definitely the one that the band thought was the best song on the album. Uh, I would probably still say that's the best song, like best riffs, most well written and like structured and put together and stuff.
Mhm.
Probably has my favorite mosh parts, some of my favorite lyrics, and it was definitely Alex's kind of peak like death metal influence too. So it's probably the most death metal like. It sounds funny to say this, but for the band, it's was kind of crazy how there isn't really like a breakdown for the first, I don't know, 2 minutes or something, which
Yeah.
was a long stretch for us uh, to not have like a mosh part. Uh, yeah, maybe like a minute and a half, 2 minutes or something like that. Uh, so I look back at that song quite fondly. It's definitely still my favorite, I think.
Yeah, admittedly, I haven't listened to the record in quite a few months because the only place, because I pretty much only use streaming and I don't have a copy anymore.
Mhm.
So every now and then I'll pop it
Yeah,
up on
sounds
YouTube
right.
and I'll be like, damn, I need to listen to this record. But I am glad it's about to be back on streaming soon. So my memory of it is a little, even though I used to listen to it all the time, which is crazy. Like I remember a lot of the lyrics from the record and everything like that, but like guitar parts and stuff like that, I kind of like a little hazy to me and everything like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I do know, or I do remember when listening to it that besides like maybe bands like as Blood Runs Black around that time, you guys had a lot more in. You've already kind of mentioned this because of Alex and his death metal roots. You guys had a lot. You did have a lot more like actual guitar riffs in your stuff as opposed to just being like straight breakdown into like a rhythm part into like another breakdown. That a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
bands were trying to do, which I think went a long way. And the fact that you guys were so young and that influenced by all that stuff is like it's incredible to me. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of bands were doing that.
Yeah. There was probably a portion of writing that album where Alex had evolved to the point of not wanting to make mosh music anymore.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, and that kind of describes Masochist. And then the lyrics are probably some of the like last ones I wrote. Um, they were kind of like reflecting on how I had changed in my thoughts about songs where which we had written some, like Filthy and Triumph, where they're just like the songs about like killing an ex-girlfriend, and the Masochist lyrics are kind of about like if anyone's taking this too seriously, um, like you need to grow up a little bit.
Yeah.
um, uh, and by that I mean like if anyone's legitimately like hating women, or feeling like violent thoughts towards them, like you need to take a step back, um, and kind of calling it out for being like silly, but it's also kind of naive because it's like okay, but then we like re-recorded those songs on the album too, so uh,
I mean,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
a funny thing.
this is probably jumping ahead a little bit here, but since we're already on the
Sure.
topic, it was one thing that I had always thought about is like even though you mentioned lyrics, like people taking them a little too literal. I do think that you guys were ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, like speaking about stuff in a more political way that a lot of like deathcore bands weren't really doing because deathcore kind of started taking like the death metal approach and writing about like butchering
Yeah.
women or whatever and zombies, just pretty death metal lyrics. But you guys were taking a more like political approach to a lot of lyrics, I felt like.
Yeah, yeah, that was probably just because that's what I liked at the time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. um Whereas the killing people lyrics was kind of more like written when we were younger and probably
Mhm.
written to like be popular, kind of recognizing the moment that that's like what people like and kind of just trying to like fit in with it.
Yeah.
um so those other songs like the political songs are kind of like the more evolved, more true to self tracks and more like reflective of who we were, um as people when making Masochist,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I always appreciate that because like you guys were in like the vein of All Shall Perish. I felt like with like what you were writing about, besides like the re-recorded songs and stuff. Um,
Totally, yeah. And they
I
were
think
like
that people,
a big
go ahead.
influence too. And them and Animosity, big influences.
Oh yeah,
They were
animosity.
also kind of nearby. Like we were from Sacramento and they're from the Bay. And
Yeah,
growing up in Sacramento, you think everything from the Bay is cooler, and everyone from the Bay is cooler. Uh, and so they were like hugely impactful on us with sound, and for me, like with lyrics too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there there's a lot of good bands that came from the Bay Area, man. It's like one of those things,
Yeah.
it's
It's
like I was saying,
never
like
ending
Bay
too.
Area, New York. I mean, those are like the hubs of so many good bands. Just that, I mean, that's a big city thing, but it's true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. We got Filthy here.
Yeah. So that's like a re-recording.
Mhm.
The original one was recorded sometime after the '04 demo. Um, and it was recorded just like as a single, so it's not really like attributed to a release. In
Okay,
fact, on this reissue, that old recording's on it, just kind of has like a bonus track. And it says
nice.
Filthy, and then it says 2005 single in parentheses to differentiate it. So yeah, I know five that came out just as like a single, like a little MySpace single. Um, and Yeah, we re-recorded it for Masochist. I think we were also just kind of out of material for a full length. I think Alex was kind of starting to hit a wall. And as I had mentioned before, was kind of getting too like death metal for this.
Yeah,
Um, like he was on like deep diving on forums and stuff and checking out obscure death metal. I think was starting to get maybe kind of like embarrassed of having a deathcore band and not just like a death metal band. So he was like tapped out with writing. So I think that probably contributed to why three songs were re-recorded uh, on Masochist. So this being one of them. Yeah. Yeah. One of our most well-known tracks.
yep.
Um,
This is kind of
yeah.
an off topic question, but are you curious at all when it goes up on streaming what your highest stream song is going to be?
Yeah. I'm curious, like, well, I think we know.
Okay. I
That would
I
be
I,
like,
I want to hear like what your take is on that.
yeah, it'll probably be Incinerate
Okay.
or Filthy. But here's the thing, like, because uh, there's bonus tracks,
Hmm.
I'm curious like what version it will be. Um, and if it's the type of thing where like the two filthies are being like split in half, then it's possible that like some other track becomes the number one track. Uh,
Yeah, that's true.
so so it's possible it'll be like a random song because Incinerate will like have the old version, Filthy will have the old version, and Triumph will have the old version on it.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see that myself. Not that I take like streaming numbers too much into account, but it is interesting to see like what song is always like the top and what people listen to the most. Because sometimes it's like a song
Yeah.
that I'm like, man, I don't fucking like this song. But that's just me, Like I'm not saying that's
Oh
the
yeah.
my opinion is the be all end all, but it's like, man, that song, huh? Okay, cool.
Totally. Yeah. But yeah, I think Incinerate now is uh, gonna have a lot of like people who are like, they said what? Like, I need to check that out. Like this sort of shock value for people who haven't heard the band.
Yep.
And then if I'm a person who's like revisiting the album and it's been like 10 years, that's probably where I would start, or that's probably what I like remember about the band. So yeah, I think it'll
I
be that track.
For me, the track that always we're not there yet, but actually, you know what? I'll get there when we get to it. So let's go on
Yeah,
to
I guess we're skipping.
Malignancy.
Um, oh, cool. Yeah, that's a super fun song. We like always continued playing that in our set. Um, that's like cool, fun riffs that Alex made. Has that kind of more death metal. Like you could tell it's one of the later songs we wrote around when we wrote like the Masochist title track.
Mhm.
Um, has those more kind of like updated, like political style lyrics. Um, and has just like a kind of like pile up part that I've always really liked. Um, we made some like new merch and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, and put one of the quotes on the back of it. So I hope that's a song that people will still enjoy, and that like if there's any new listeners, they'll enjoy. because that one's cool. Yeah.
So you said this was like kind of one of the songs too, where like you kind of started to talk about different things lyrically.
Yeah.
What do you remember the most about like kind of changing up that writing style for the songs?
Before it used to be really easy to format the songs. Like we could have a practice where we have some like riffs and breakdowns, and then I could like be at school,
Mhm.
or Alex or Kevin could do this, but I could take a piece of paper and make a song by doing I could be like uh terror part, um uh zany death metal riff twice, to uh funny breakdown that says blah blah blah. Um, and we could like build a song that way with just shit that we had like written in practice. Um, but then with these songs that became a little more like there's more to them. They were put together with much more thought than like just a piece of paper. Um,
Yeah.
there was just more like actual physical practice, like being in the garage and like putting them together, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Sweet, man. All right. So let's go on to Triumph, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
So
that
this
was.
is, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead if you're gonna ask a question about it.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say this is the song that always stuck out to me the most. Triumph on the record. That's one I remember from when
Yeah.
I heard you guys.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure. And as I've been like re-listening to like the remaster version and stuff, it's probably like my favorite to re-listen to. Um, yeah, this was like peak mosh, like hardest pit song.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fair.
yeah, thumbs are in your eyes. Uh, inspired by 28 Days Later,
Yeah,
that movie. I don't remember when in the film or what the context is, but there's some point where someone pushes someone's eyes in, or maybe they're like doing it to a zombie,
it's
or a
yeah. I think
zombie
it's
is
near the
doing it.
end of the movie when all the zombies break into the house, and I think
Yeah.
they get one of the army dudes and just like smash his eyes in. Ugh.
Uh, yeah. So
I think it's
that
been a little
that
while,
gave
but
me
I'm
the
pretty
idea.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and that was one of those songs that was written in that kind of like notepad way. In fact, I think there's a part like I mentioned kind of as a joke where I was like terror part. I think that is actually like a literal thing that we had in this track. uh, I think like Lowest of the Low had come out before, and we were like, oh, this is super sick, catchy, and like that was kind of our like version of hardcore that we wanted to like include into our sound. Um, also, so it was on the O4 demo, and that's also when we first kind of started doing a little bit of death metal shit. So I
yeah.
also kind of think of Triumph as like the first track that's like that. Um, whereas Incinerate's still kind of part of like our old sound. There's really nothing like there's no like death metal riff in Incinerate or anything. So it really starts with Triumph. Uh,
And this is
yeah,
kind of like the
super
midway
super fun
point
song.
of the record too.
Yeah, what we're at like track 5.
Yeah. Yep. Track 5.
Yeah. Okay. If you don't mind, real quick,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull up the notes I wrote actually.
Yeah,
That
man.
way, when you
Absolutely.
ask, I'm just gonna have like a quick refresher that I could find.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about getting as much information as possible. So I love that. Okay, we just talked about Triumph. So now
Yeah,
we're going to talk about Theocracy, which is very apt for this current point in time in our history.
yeah, yeah. And funny because I was kind of telling you earlier about I how there's too many lyrics on this song.
Yep. Yep. Got a lot to say about it, which is very, very,
Yeah,
I get it, man. Sometimes it's
yeah.
hard not to.
Yeah, I wish I could have cut them down a little bit, but yeah, I think you're right. It was also when you're young, like topics like this are new to you, so that you're like really excited, I
Passionate.
guess, to
Yeah.
share thoughts about them. I had like literally just read a book called American Theocracy
Uh-huh.
before I had written this. Um, so probably one of my first like nonfiction, like current events, political books I'd like maybe ever read. So uh, almost every song on this album like talks about theocracy, really. Um, but yeah, this is the one song that's like solely kind of focused on it. Uh, yeah, like I said, we'd never played it. Um, it's kind of it's also it's just a shame because the riffs are like really like fun in this one again too. It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of Malignancy in that way. Um, it's just kind of like bouncy and moshy. Um,
Did you guys always
and
get a
yeah,
lot of requests for it when you were playing live?
no, not really.
No. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There was honestly nothing really ever like that where people were like, "Oh, why don't you play this or that or anything?" Like, I think we kind of just always played the songs. There was a while where we weren't playing like Filthy anymore, but that was kind of towards the end.
Yeah.
Um, when I was like 20, and we were just like, I don't really want to play Filthy anymore.
I can imagine, man. That's why I like, you know, you hear or see these complaints online sometimes when people go to shows and they see some band who's been around. Let's just use Cannibal Corpse as an example. Oh man,
Yeah,
Cannibal Corpse didn't play X song that I like. Well, it's probably
yeah,
because they played it for 30 fucking years. Like, why? Of course
yeah,
they don't want to play it. Like,
totally. Yeah,
and I can imagine
yeah.
because then, near the end, you guys only had two records, so I'm sure you wanted to spend more time playing new stuff over stuff that people had already heard for however long it was between those two records.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was a weird period for the band.
Yeah,
That kind of transition period, which obviously didn't go well. Otherwise, we probably would have still stuck around. Uh, but yeah, yeah. So theocracy.
but
Okay, yeah. So
I want to touch on that, I guess. Like, so do you think?
yeah, sure.
I mean, if you've talked about this ad nauseum, please tell me, because I don't. I try not to watch like other people's interviews or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, well, why do you
Oh
think?
well, I
Go
probably
ahead.
haven't talked about it often. So yeah, do not worry.
So why do you think that? Like, did people just not respond to the kind of change in sound and do you really think that that's what like kind of caused you guys just kind of want to be like, now we're done?
Oh, not like the main cause, but definitely like
Mhm.
the probably biggest thing. And I think we kind of went into it knowing that it might be the last thing.
Oh wow.
Um, which is kind of why it was so like, oh, we're just gonna do whatever we want. Uh, but I do think that if it had been received well, then it just would have been hard to like walk away from.
Right.
Now, I don't think it that would have been realistic to like expect, because it's so different from like deathcore. Like I totally understand why those fans wouldn't have liked it. And I think we were maybe, I think we were maybe naive in thinking that we could gain new fans. Although I kind of remember being like going into it, trying to set low expectations for that.
Mhm.
But I think deep down, we like truly did want to like gain new fans.
Sure.
Um, and and I just don't think it was possible for that band to transition into like the world and style that line of Judas was. Yeah.
That's unfortunate, man, because I feel like nowadays most people are a lot more open-minded when bands kind of like change up their sound, even if it is a
Yeah.
drastic kind of like change in sound. um I mean, maybe this is just me, but one I'll use an example. Maybe you know of them. Do you know that band Hundredth?
Oh, just the name. No, I don't know their
Okay.
music.
They used to be
Yeah.
just like a straight up hardcore band. Like that's all they were. And then they
Uh,
did two, maybe three records that were like hardcore, and now they're just like a straight up shoegaze band. No metal
oh,
at all.
really? Oh,
Yeah, dude.
shit.
No metal, none. And I mean they, you know, that's a hard right turn, but I mean I still like what they do now, and I'm not gonna be like, oh well, they're a different band because it's still the same members. But it's like I have those
Yeah,
hardcore records I can listen to, and I have their shoegaze stuff. It's like I don't care that they changed.
yeah,
But I guess back then, man, people were people were a little bit more quick to be like, no, fuck this band. We're done,
yeah.
which is
And it was
unfortunate.
a big switch too. Like it was into a style that our fans or like deathcore kids had no familiarity with.
Yeah.
So I remember just some of the funny comments we received about like people comparing it to things was crazy. Like we would hear the wildest shit where I'm just like, what? Like some kid said like, oh, what is this from first to last or something
Oh, what?
like that. I was just like, God
It's not even
damn,
close.
dude, you've like never heard a Converge album because that's I know that was basically the main influence on that sound. It's just like Jesus Christ. Uh, but we would get like shit like that all the time. Um, because we did tour that album maybe like once, like maybe like played like 30 shows off of that album.
Yeah. I
And
do remember though too,
yeah,
that was a time where people were a lot more like divisive as far as like genre classifying, and it was like, the whole
yeah,
gore not gore thing, and there was a lot more elitism. Whereas I feel
oh
like
yeah,
now that's kind of gone away, man. It's still there, don't
yeah,
get me wrong. But yeah, it is an unfortunate time that's when that album came out, and that's what happened is people weren't as receptive as I think they would have been now. It was ahead of its time, let's put it that way.
yeah, maybe. I definitely think the name kind of our name hurt it, you know. Um, so I think that still would be like a problem today, but I definitely think like the sound is probably more something people are familiar with now
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
that's true.
just kind of like metallic hardcore. I think is hardcore is as big as it's ever been. Really seems
Yeah.
like. So I think yeah, I guess there would have been a better response nowadays. Yeah.
All right, so let's get back to uh the current album we're talking about, Masochist. We're gonna move on to Xenophobia.
Oh, cool. Uh, this is a song we would play sometimes. This was kind of our like track we would use to like extend our set list.
Okay.
I don't know if it was super popular or anything, but we really liked it. It was really fun to play. I feel like it has like one of the biggest mosh parts at the end too. Um, so I always thought it would hit a little harder live. Uh, but yeah, I think it was kind of missing a little bit live, but we'll see. One thing I'm curious about with this re-release is if there's gonna be like kind of one of these like random songs that all of a
Yeah.
sudden some people are like, oh, that track's tight. you
Yeah,
know?
that's always like when I see something like that, man, it's like, oh cool, this song actually resonated with a lot more people than you thought it did. And yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of why I asked that earlier, because I'm curious to see when it hits streaming, like because people can see that like all that information, like what's gonna be the top songs. And I hope it's something that's kind of like maybe a little, I don't know if obscure is the right word on the record, but something a little less popular, maybe.
yeah, yeah. Um, and then it was written about. I feel like this one's pretty like lyrics should be pretty self-explanatory on this one. It was it was
Yep.
about like my family um, migrating from Mexico to America and how that was seen at the time in 2006 under the Bush administration. And it was also maybe like the first time like the wall had been talked about as like a solution. So yeah, it's kind of about like the wall, uh, which is still very relevant today. I think
Yeah,
that's
man.
kind of neat that we had some. Well, I guess it's not neat. Like, because I guess that's a bad sign.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Like you're writing about a real problem and people are still
Yeah, that's what I
fucking
mean. Like,
like being xenophobic assholes.
yeah, like okay, like these aren't resolved at all. So it's bad that these are still relevant today, um, and not neat.
I took a I'm gonna give you a little side story. I took a trip to Nashville a couple days ago to go see a show, and
Uh,
on the way there, man, there was a giant fucking billboard that said "Fix the goddamn border crisis, Biden," and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like it's
yeah, you live in
2024.
Tennessee. Like,
Yeah,
chill
like we're
out.
not even. That's exactly what I said to my girlfriend. I was like, we're not even near a fucking border. Like, what are these people so scared of here in Tennessee? Like,
Yeah,
oh, man, it's so crazy to me. I can't imagine being scared of a person just because of their color of their skin or religion. I don't know. I'm off on a weird tangent here, but I've never been that kind of
yeah,
person. Always struck me that like people are so close-minded like that, man. I don't get it. I
yeah.
don't care.
And so, well, and that's perfect because this song really is just like a tangent about that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's why I mean that's why I said I even when I was like younger and listening to your band, like I appreciated stuff that was like a little more deeper than just some surface level like whatever death metal lyrics. And that's kind of why I
yeah,
gravitated towards enjoying your guys' music more than a lot of other bands because like oh they got something to say and like they're young kids and like I'm kind of young, so it was cool to see that like somebody could say something more in their face politically than and it that goes back to punk music, man. We're
yeah,
gonna full circle here. A lot of punk music was about like stuff like that back in the day. So um,
yeah,
I
yeah.
always
Very
appreciate.
true. Yeah, so it felt just kind of natural and normal for me to
Yeah.
write like that about those things. So yeah,
Okay. So incinerate. We've talked about this one a little bit.
yeah.
Um,
So this was released originally. It's on. Oh, okay, so it's first on the 2004 demo.
okay.
But like I said, it was written before the other tracks on the 2004 demo. Like,
Yeah.
so it's not really like a like deathcore yet. We haven't like evolved to that yet. But it was really our first like moshy song, and we wrote it to be a track that we played first to kind of like trick people into like moshing the rest of the set. Um, we're like, oh yeah, you get them moving to start, and then when you play your other tracks that are a little less moshy, they'll still be like
Hyped up.
going crazy and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we literally slapped it together, kind of that same like notebook style thing where we're like, here's a riff, and we would have like yeah those like funny names for them. Um, uh, this might have a terror part two that we had written down. Um, anyways, we put it together before a show, like that day we were playing a show. In the liner notes, I said it was the show we were playing with 100 Demons. Like that's what I remember.
Oh wow.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. And it was at a community center that was like 5 minutes away from my house, um, where we grew up, uh, which is so crazy. Because it's also I lived like 45 minutes from the city of Sacramento.
Yeah.
Um, and for some reason, I think like we and some friends have been renting this spot, this community center for small local shows and shit, like nothing like a tour.
Mhm.
And then our like DIY, like hardcore venue in Sac was this place called West Coast Worldwide, who uh which was owned by Mike from Hoods, which was
Oh,
like
sick.
yeah, like the big like Sac hardcore band.
Yeah.
Um and there was this period where he like lost West Coast Worldwide. I don't remember like permits or some shit.
Yeah.
And I think caught wind of what we were doing at this community center and then kind of moved his operations to there. And it was so crazy. It's like so random because, like I said, it was 5 minutes from my house, rural too.
Yeah.
Like I lived like everyone had like land and stuff, and it wasn't like a suburb. It was like totally rural. Um, and he would put touring bands in this place that's like 45 minutes away from Sacramento. So I remember like 100 Demons playing there, All Shall Perish playing there. These are
Oh
probably like different shows and shit.
yeah, no,
Um,
that's pretty sick. Yeah,
yeah,
I, that's the thing is like people kind of forget these bigger band. Well, I don't know if it's a good example, but still, like you got to remember a lot of these bands started off playing places like that. You know, they weren't always,
yeah.
especially like I guess at one point, you know, Also Parish was playing like pretty big venues before they kind of like split up and everything. But
Oh yeah,
I'm
they
not.
got huge.
Yeah, I know I like 100 Demons, but I'm not familiar enough with like how big they were in the scene back then. Because like
Oh
I don't know, that's so long ago.
yeah, they were big with like the hardcore scene.
Yeah,
Um, and we kind of like were, I guess, playing in both for a while. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, there were a lot of shows where that would we'd play at West Coast Worldwide that were just like hardcore shows. Um, we weren't really like uh, welcomed into the more popular like metalcore stuff in Sacramento for a while. In fact, we I think caught on first in like SoCal, like Orange County
yep,
and Vegas before Sacramento ever really even liked us. And I think a part of that was just like people who liked metalcore really, you know, that shitty like Christcore stuff was really big. You had to
yeah.
play melodic like emo metalcore, and I think that informed our sound a lot. Was rebelling against that and just being like, "Oh shit sucks." uh, I think that's a good way for young people to start bands. Is like obviously have things you like, but I think it's important to like know what you don't want to do, and
Yeah.
you'll sound more focused on one thing. Early Elesia, like the Killing Grounds EP, it's pulling from so many influences. There's no really like Killing Grounds sound. It's just like every type of metalcore is in the Killing Grounds EP. Like
Yeah.
literally every single. It's like there's like rock riffs, which we would got the idea from. I think like Every Time I Die would play like butt rock riffs sometimes,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
Between the
And
Bear and
between the
Me
bear
would
and
do
me.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That they gave us kind of that idea, and then we would have like converge parts,
Yeah.
some like kind of coalesce parts. We like really like coalesce, and then we would do like something kind of emo, like From Autumn to Ashes shit, and then we would like go into like At the Gates like mellow death shit. It was just fucking crazy. So yeah,
Wearing your
like
influences on your sleeve.
so yeah. So what's the point I was making? Yeah, so just it can be helpful to like uh know what you don't want to do and know what you like. Like you gotta like hate something
Right.
um and rebel against that. That's kind of how we like developed our sound because there was just like this big scene because it was big in Sac, this like all these like church venue places that would have um like Norma Jean play and like those types of bands. And you know, eventually when we created the sound, we decided like that shit sucks.
Yeah.
Um, and like that helped us. That helped us immensely, actually. Um,
I kind of had a
so
similar
yeah,
thing where I grew up, man. Like I said, you know, like Chattanooga is like there wasn't a whole lot going on here, and the bands that were kind of big were like these quote unquote Christian metalcore bands, and we would get
yeah, it was
again
such a
bands like
thing.
you mentioned, Norma Jean, all that kind of stuff, and eventually we did have a couple bands that kind of you know, little band named Whitechapel popped up around here, well Knoxville, but you know they played
Oh
here
yeah,
all the fucking
that's from
time.
Knox.
But yeah, it's like
Yeah,
you know they were kind of rebelling against that Christian sound that was down here and writing
yeah,
death metal lyrics about eating cum and shoving it back in a dead woman's mouth.
yeah. Which I mean, it was perfect if you were like a metalcore kid who was like starting to get a little older. Like you
Yeah,
weren't 16 anymore, you were like 18. and
yeah, yeah,
it sounded like this like evolved, like heavier, less like wimpy version of what you had been listening to before. Uh, and I think that was a huge appeal to it, um, for sure. Uh, and let's see. So we were talking about Incinerate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of alluded to this earlier. The lyrical content in this song is a little bit subversive, and we're talking about people taking things at face value. If you kind of want to go through that little, the meaning versus the actual lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of like vacillate between like, oh, I could understand why someone would be like upset when they hear the song. And
Right.
also, and then on the other hand, sometimes I'm just like, damn, if you just read, I think a friend, our old drummer said this to me recently. He's like, I was like, man, if someone read a couple lines, and he's like, dude, if someone read one line from that, from
Yeah.
those lyrics, they'd kind of like understand what the point of it is. Um, but I think because the word is in it, it's just going to be like always a super
Touchy
um,
subject.
emotional, like immediate response.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, as most of our fans know, I hope we had made clear while a band, and I think the lyrics made it
You
clear.
did. Yeah, yeah. I remember reading a bunch of interviews back then where you guys had to like clarify what was going on with that because even back
Yeah,
then people were like, "Hey, what's up with this lyric?" Um, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
subversion, man. Not everybody picks up on it, which is unfortunate. But
yeah. It was hard to like get in trouble for it because like let's say it was a song that was uh, that just said that word to as like a diss to someone.
yeah,
Um, if we were getting shit for that, people, I guess we would just be like, oh, like whatever. But when you're getting for shit for something that you didn't mean, like that was super difficult. That was always really hard for me and for like dudes in the band who are just kind of like constantly like, oh fuck, like no, that's
yeah.
there's this one time played we played like a record store in people from the area will probably remember the name. It was in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Been
And
to Allentown a couple times. I don't know.
yeah, I don't remember the name, but uh, I bought like a bunch of records before we played. I bought like 6 records, probably spent like $150 or something just on a
Damn.
credit card. uh, and uh, so we were like stoked on this place. And at the end, um, which I didn't learn until we were like in the van driving away, our bass player was like, yo, I went to buy a shirt that says their name on it. And they said no. Like, I was like, what the fuck? Like, what do you mean they wouldn't sell you a shirt? And he's like, yeah, like they said they don't want to be seen having us like repping them. Um, and it was because of the word. Like they didn't know who we were, but they saw us play that song and like just heard the word. So fuck, it used to drive me crazy. And I think that has a lot to do with like why the re-release has taken so long. Cause I was just like, dude, I don't want to constantly be like defending myself. It really sucks.
Right.
But now that I'm older, it's a lot easier to just be like, well, whatever, dude. Like I was like 14 or 15, like it has good intentions. Um, and if the word pisses you off, like sure, I could get why, but
Yeah.
like whatever. I'm not gonna like sweat it as much anymore. And like I said, I think at least the fans understand. It was always like so like why the words even said is because what we're talking about is we're talking about um, burning like Christian homophobe conservative people
Yes.
at the
Exactly.
stake, um, which is sort of like the etymology, the like history of the word is that it comes from like burning like
Bundles.
people who are seen as strange homosexual people like um, with a bundle of sticks. Um, and so it became like, yeah, this like slur that was used for that. So what the song is saying is like, we're burning you at the stake now. Um, so like who's so
Yeah.
what's up now?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
basically the song's like, what's up now? Um,
Which like
yeah, that's
I,
what it's written. Like,
yeah, and
yeah,
I think clarifying that, is good for hopefully people listening and like watching this, it obviously you guys have explained this over the years, like I mentioned, but Again, there's always that
Yeah.
one or two people that take it the wrong way and are like, no, it means this horrible thing. And it's like, nah, man, just like, stuff cannot always be surface level, especially when you're an artist and you're in a band. Like nothing is ever going to be surface level.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't resonate with people.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was so creative when I was like 15 too. And yeah, it's just yeah, that part's so funny. Um, like we had a I think why it was like relevant and in my mind at the time was well, first of all, there was a Between the Bear and Me song that I liked on their self-titled album that was like about Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it's called, but so
Uh,
anyways, kind of
yeah.
talking about this thing. And then dude, I like some point at my school, I remember when there was one day where I was like leaving and there was just some random Christian, like a church, handing out flyers, and they were just like these like shock images of like men kissing and stuff.
Oh
and
no.
and
So shocking.
and it was just about how like yeah, like gay people are gonna burn in hell and shit. You know, I had always thought like, oh, Westboro Baptist Church is so like that's so far away, you know, that's a small group of fucking crazy people. And then all of a sudden it was like at school, I'm like holding a piece of like literature from psycho people like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about how like fuck, like every dude here is like so impressionable. And it's high school where you're like really like macho and like trying to always prove your manliness. And I'm just like hearing dudes like looking at it and being like, ew, like grossed out by the images and shit. And I was just felt like it was so fucking unfair and felt like I was fuming about it. And like maybe
Yeah.
I wrote this like that night or something, or like a few days later or something. Yeah.
I mean, man, I hate to say it, but I feel like that's, how a lot of these conservative groups get a hold of people nowadays, man. They still go for the young kids who are impressionable and easily
Yeah.
manipulated and believing this bullshit, and they fill them with all these hateful ideas, and like who knows if they'll grow out of it, and hopefully they do, but you never know. And that's, you start when you're that young, sometimes it just doesn't leave your brain because you're that impressionable.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's always some just like dumb, like non-threat, like some just like small social issue that conservatives
Yeah.
are always railing about. And you're just like,
Oh,
oh, this is just obviously because dumb people fall for this and
right.
are fucking afraid of everything and it makes them go to the polls. It's just really that simple. Like that's always the conservative platform.
Yeah. Fear
It's been
mongering.
that way for a long time. Yeah. Uh,
So obviously,
yeah.
guys watching and people out there listening, a lot more to read to in here. So, don't always take things at face value. So
Yeah.
the next song on the record, we got one left after this one, Sadist.
Yeah. I felt like I knew the album title already was going to be Masochist. And so I was like, oh, I got to have a song. Say it.
Yeah, yeah,
This for me would have been my kind of like I said, Alex had got to a point where he kind of hit the wall. I think I had kind of hit a wall here. Um, Reading the lyrics, I'm like, wow, I know what I'm talking about at first.
hmm
I'm like trying to write a song that's like against the death penalty. Um, but then it just kind of goes off the rails and is just like about killing people again.
I mean,
Um,
like you said, you started off with a good idea, and maybe it didn't go exactly where you wanted it to, but
yeah.
sometimes I'm
So
right.
to dress it up, we got our friend to do like guest vocals. And we're like, oh, maybe we can make the song like cooler with that. So
Yeah.
yeah, there was this band named Excoriate who was from our same high school, actually. Um, Started after us. We're maybe like one dude was my grade. I think the rest of the dudes were like a grade below us or
Okay.
younger than us. Um, I don't think they had like recorded yet at the time. Um, it was like his first time recording. I remember he was like super nervous and stuff. uh, but yeah, they put out like a demo, maybe two demos or so, and then I think just ran into like a having like not being able to find a drummer and just like broke up or something like that. So yeah, kind of a bummer. Yeah, this was a song we never played.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, never played just because I think we felt like this was kind of the one that was sort of hobbled together and
Okay.
maybe not the best representation of us, but sometimes those tracks can be cool for some people who like find something that they like about it. So I'm not going to say it's like a bad track, but it's definitely like the one I've thought the least about in my life.
I feel like every band has those songs. You know, it's like the one that's
Yeah,
like, all right, we've written how many songs? We got to get one more on here. What can we do that's like probably got one cool thing in it?
yeah, yeah. There's some cool things. I like some of the
Yeah.
riffs in the beginning
Yeah, and I
for
mean,
sure.
like you said, the
Yeah.
playing the juxtaposition of like Masochist and Sadist, it's like, maybe you have to be a little sadistic to listen to
Oh, yeah.
it. All right, so let's go on to the last track here, man, with Swine, closer of the record.
Oh, yeah. Um, yeah. This is we really liked this song, especially playing this. It just has like a huge breakdown in the middle that is pretty sick. That
And this one has the
when we,
Gangs of New York sound clip in it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I feel like when we played this live, it always had a good reaction. That breakdown that's in the middle, I always thought live was like our heaviest part. Um, yeah, it has lyrics that I like. Um, I love the sound clip in the beginning and at the end. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, the beginning one is just is the butcher from Gangs of New York, the Daniel Day-Lewis character. Um, I know some people think that's kind of weak, a weak Scorsese film in his
Hard to
filmography,
disagree. No, that's a great film.
but I like it, and I just love that character. I think that's why I like it so much. Like the butcher is
Yeah.
just a sick character, one of my favorites, and I just thought he had so many cool quotes. We probably could have even used more. This is actually the second one on the album.
Oh yeah, you're
He's
right.
Yeah, he's on maybe I think he's on Xenophobia, saying that's what controls the order of things for you.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
man, I totally forgot about that one.
Uh, yeah. And then it's just like, yeah, a fun track. Alex was like throwing down, revisiting it. I never thought of this one as being like really death metal, but I'm just like, oh, like the riffing is there, but we we always like kind of like kept the drumming kind of more grounded, which I'm really happy about when revisiting this because I think deathcore got way too like glitzy and glamoury and like show offy, where like everyone on their instrument wants to stand out.
Yep.
And uh, I like how like this track doesn't have blast, for example. Um, it's just kind of like humble drumming, I suppose. And that was like Kevin's style. He was more of like a classically trained drummer rather than like a full on metal drummer. Like he liked some of the death metal that Alex would listen to. Um, but him and I were always kind of more like, oh, we like moshy shit a little more. Um,
Yeah.
so he's one of the reasons why the band like sounds metalcore um, or hardcore uh, because him and I always wanted to like bring it back to that. Um, yeah, so it just kind of starts off all like circle pity and stuff. uh, and the song's just about like warfare. Um, uh, talks a lot about like theocracy again. It's a big theme in this album. Religion and like holy wars. Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess this would have been the Bush years still, right? 2006.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I
Definitely.
mean, all that stuff's still going on, and history is just repeating itself
Yeah.
over and over, or maybe it never stopped. I don't know. It's hard to tell these days, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then it ends with like I think I think the last lyrics kind of just were like a way for me to, I guess, just kind of summarize what the album was about. Um, where it just starts saying like, religion is a weapon of mass destruction, greed is a weapon, fear is a weapon, hatred is a weapon. It just kind of, it's just like a list of things.
And it,
uh,
I agree with it, man. It is. We just even looking at our own country, man, like how they're really trying to use religion as this weird litmus test of morality, and it's like I don't need to be religious to be moral. Like, come on, man. It's such a
yeah,
weird thing, and it's used as a weapon, so it's in greed. Yeah,
yeah.
we could go down lists like you said. Everything
Well, yeah,
has,
it's interesting you
oh,
say that. I think a lot of there are lots of lyrics in here about like I'm still a good person. I think that was like a big theme of it, uh, for sure. Yeah. Um, and the mass destruction thing was really contextual to that time too, because this was around the Iraq War, where you're like hearing about they have weapons of mass destruction, and so those last lyrics are like a response to that of like, well, these are things that are real, like tangible things that cause destruction massively.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I enjoyed like rereading this while putting together the re-release. It was really fun. Yeah.
So
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
so I definitely want to get into that. I'm almost out of time again on this. Crazy, we've actually gone to 40-minute things. So if like, do you have more
Oh
time so
yeah.
we can talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. I figured like
Okay.
also if we were gonna do the track by track thing, I was like, okay, buckle up.
Okay. Cool. Yeah,
So
man. I'm glad you're taking the time to do this, man. Seriously, we got all through the album. One
mhm.
last little thing about the album, the original album. And I didn't know this, but according apparently to Discogs that I have pulled up here, the album was originally planned to be released on This City Is Burning Records, but problems forced the band to release it independently. What is that all about? I didn't know about
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah. We were like on the cities burning
Mhm.
um for a little bit without having like released anything. So the plan was that we were going to release this album with them, and then like last second there was just basically some financial issues
Mm.
with them to where they kind of just like couldn't put it out, and would have been too late for us to like shop it elsewhere, and we already had this kind of DIY mentality anyways,
Yeah.
so it just made sense to do ourselves. Made a lot more sense. Yeah.
So was there any like kind of challenges with that? Like, like you guys thought somebody else was going to handle it. Like, how did you guys kind of shift to be like, okay, now we have to do this? Like, where did you guys find like how to release it? Like, did you have to do
Yeah.
a lot of research and all that, or
Yeah. Well, honestly, I feel like it was kind of easy. Like,
that's good to hear though
I feel
too.
like because I had like spearheaded getting like the layout done.
Okay.
So like all the artwork was like done and stuff. So I think we just like asked someone like, hey, who prints CDs? They sent us just like a website where you just upload all your shit to it.
Damn.
We did 1,000. Um, yeah, just paid for it with like band funds. Um, and then we knew one thing. Well, we knew that by doing just 1,000, like we didn't have to worry about like distribution. You know, um, we're like we can just put these for sale uh, via PayPal on our MySpace,
Yeah.
ship them out ourselves, and we could just sell them at shows. Um, and so we got rid of 1,000 like doing that eventually. Got rid of it.
Now, was that all
So
that was made?
yeah, and then later on, Ferret Records did like a licensing reprint of it,
I think that's the copy that I always had. It's the Ferret one.
and I think it was like a Hot Topic exclusive
Yeah,
was the
that is-
deal, and it was like
I got it.
it was 500 or 1,000. I don't remember. But that's the one that has a barcode. So there are two. There's like ours uh from 2006, no barcode, and then Ferrets with the barcode in the back,
Okay.
right before Line of Judas came out. So like in 2008.
Damn, so maybe I had the original one.
Yeah,
It's hard to say.
it's just that barcode on the back is how you can tell.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know I bought it before 2008. Like, there's no fucking way I didn't have that thing. Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So if you don't remember this stuff that I'm gonna ask next, that's totally fine. I don't expect anybody short of the guitar player to kind of really remember this stuff. But one thing I also remember about you guys is you did have a very unique guitar tone. Do you kind of remember like what equipment Alex used and like tunings and stuff like that as far as like playing?
It was actually like a very standardized setup. Like it was 5150.
Yeah, I mean,
And it seemed like everyone was using one back then.
right. They
Yeah.
were. That was like the guitar head, man, for a long time.
Yeah, totally. Um, it sounds good. Yeah.
It does, I mean, to this day, I've never heard anybody replicate that guitar tone whatsoever, unless I'm just listening to the wrong stuff. I don't know, but you guys had a very unique guitar tone.
A lot of it would have been like not on purpose.
Mhm.
It would have just been like what what the like engineer was like giving us basically, and we'd be like, okay, cool, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Like, I think we were too young to like think and like want to influence the guitar tone, really. I mean, besides live, I know Alex wanted to have it sound a certain way, but when recording it, I think we were kind of just like, give us the best guitar tone you can, and like that's what it is. Like the Masochist guitar tone is Alex's 5150, and his name's Phil from Deathbot Studios, which is RIP, not around anymore. It was just him like giving it his all, I guess. And it's funny too because the '04 demo sounds better, actually. Uh, I think when he was doing Masochist for us, he was really trying to like clean up the studio sound a
Yeah.
little bit. And I just think the '04 demo sounds like dirtier and heavier. Uh,
I can hear the heavier part because I do remember the '04
yeah.
demos for sure, and it is a little heavier, but I think the guitar riffs are a lot clearer on Masochist, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. They're like crisper and
Yeah.
clearer.
Yep.
You can hear like every note and stuff. For sure, yeah. Um, yeah. The '04 demo is like entirely on the reissue at the end. So, and it got remastered as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's perfect. We're gonna segue into this now. So you guys are doing a reissue, a remaster, everything. You kind of mentioned earlier in the episode, like it started about a year ago. Kind of take me back to where like you guys were like, or was it just you, whoever was involved with like wanting to do this remaster and reissue?
Yeah, it started longer than a year ago. It
Oh, hell
started
yeah.
like several years ago, but what would happen is it would just hit a roadblock,
Mhm.
which if you were an active band would be something small where you would just be like, we're gonna problem solve this.
Yeah.
But when it's a reissue and you don't have to do it, every roadblock I'd hit, I'd be like, well, shit, I guess I'm just not gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then like a year would go by, and someone would like just bring it up to me, or maybe even sometimes it would even just be like some old fans would like bring it up to me, like they had a massive part to do with it. So they'd bring it up to me, and I'd be like, okay, I had done this work on it. Like, what was the roadblock? Oh, it was this. Okay, let's actually look at problem solving that. Um, and so there were just like multiple things that kept making this difficult and like really prolonged it for like years, really.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
like this could have come out maybe like 4 years ago. It was probably when I was like, oh, cool, we should do this maybe.
I was about to say, depending on how long ago it was, if COVID just hit or around that time, that fucked everything up. Like nobody was releasing shit in that first 2 years of COVID.
Yeah, that was probably one of them. That was
Yeah.
definitely one of them. One of them was having so like what we ultimately went with is it's three labels, a CD late Tribunal,
Yep.
Force of Reckoning on tape, and Secret Storm vinyl. And then the digital is basically like self-release. So it's kind of like four things.
Yeah.
But one iteration of this project was a label that was doing everything, like a label who was big enough to do everything. Um, and we had like I guess like a verbal agreement to do it. And then they ghosted, like straight up like a shitty like Tinder dude ghosted me to the point where I like sent an email and a text where I hadn't heard back from them like for like 3 or 4 emails where I was just like, yo, like I won't be mad. Just can you message me back and say no
Yeah.
so that I can figure out something else? No,
Yeah.
never
Oh,
heard back.
Jesus.
So that was that prolonged it super long because then once I lost that um, version of this reissue, I was like, fuck it. Like, I don't really want to do it.
Yeah.
Because that sounded so easy. The one label thing, I was like, oh, that's so easy. And I was like, I didn't want to shop it. I didn't want to like message labels and be like, hey, we're looking to do this. So that was a big
That's a lot
setback.
of
But
work in itself too, man. Like, so are you basically
yeah,
just doing this yourself? Like you're
yeah,
trying to figure out the logistics of it? Yeah.
yeah. Um, and like I said, that might just be like a personal thing where like it's an old band of mine. So when I would hit a roadblock, I'd be like, well, I have my current life with pressing issues. Like I can only take on so much. Like I'm just gonna fucking put this on the lowest shelf possible.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
valid, man.
so
You got to worry about
yeah,
yourself and your life more than anything else.
yeah, yeah, that was basically it. So I just kept getting like pushed to the wayside and then revived and then pushed to the wayside because some problem would happen and then revived. And I think it was really probably Secret Storm. No, actually, I think Tribunal maybe got involved first, like with doing the CD,
Okay.
and he kind of helped me sort through a little bit these these like vinyl reissue labels because there's several, and we had messages from several, and he kind of helped me sort through them. And I had a friend too who had like recommended Secret Storm.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, okay, that helps a lot because when I have like messages from like 5 different like reissue labels who I've never heard of because I'm not super tapped into that, like uh because I mostly listen to like metal now and hardcore. So if people are like reissuing like old metalcore shit, like it's not really something I know about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
um,
hey, Matt knows his shit, man. That guy's,
yeah, so
he's
I
very much
needed help.
punk.
I
Yeah.
really needed help, and he probably like saved it. And then I'd also say Ricky
Yeah.
from Secret Swarm helped save it uh, and bring it back to life and finally to fruition. You know.
Yeah. So I remember when it kind of got announced that everything was being reissued. Um, I mean, it seemed, at least from what I saw, a lot of people responded really well, and everything sold out pretty damn quick, right?
Oh yeah, totally. The yeah, like yeah, the vinyl we like started with 325 or something,
Yeah,
and we were trying to be conservative because I was like, dude, like I don't want to sit on any of it,
absolutely, and that's smart, man, because
you
you
know,
know, like,
and I had no idea what the response would because when I say like a couple bands had messaged me telling me to reissue it. It was like, literally just like a handful.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any social media when we made this decision either.
Yeah.
To do 325. So, and for him, that was actually like a lot. Like I think he was doing a lot of like 200s and like 250s shit.
Okay.
So yeah, we we originally dropped it with 325, and like people were like pissed. And my whole thing, I was like, fuck, I like don't want this to be some like limited bullshit.
Yeah.
I meant for this to be like obtainable for everyone. Because the reissue is for the fans, so I want them to be able to buy it. So yeah, we like Ricky worked some magic with the pressing plant, was able to get like another pressing plus he was able to do like an open pre-order where once it ended, he could just tell the plant like, hey, make this many of this color.
That's
So
easy to do that, because I've heard
yeah,
how
that was
some
sick.
vinyl plants are because of like pop artists like taking up all the space basically.
Yeah, totally. So in response to that, there are some plants that only press independent now.
Oh, sick. Yeah, I saw that picture you posted not too long ago of like stuff getting sent out, and like that's a lot of records, man. That's awesome to see that like that's how much people responded to like wanting
Yeah,
to own a physical copy, much less like back. I'm sure back when like you guys were first starting out and like kind of going into the line of Judas, or Judas.
Judas. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought.
yeah. But it is
Yeah,
the same name, so
yeah.
often confused.
I didn't mean to butcher that on purpose. I was just like, wait. But no, like downloading was like pretty huge around that time. So like people kind of stopped buying records around that era of like music, and now it's
Yeah,
back vinyl. That's all people want.
yeah. Like that album was never pressed on vinyl,
Yeah,
so we're looking to do that too.
should.
Yeah.
It's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, the one thing when talking about the history of everything, and this is kind of how I want to frame this question. Obviously, maybe I don't know if you realize this now or if you realize it in any point in your life, but obviously this band did have an impact on a lot of people. And now doing this reissue, is it easier for you to kind of like see that, where it's like, damn, like maybe we really did kind of make this mark on the music scene, and even though we only put out these 2 records, here we are 18 years later, and people still want to listen to this. And even though you and the rest of the band members have kind of like moved on from that, like, do you still feel like you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish with the band and everything?
Oh, the second one's a loaded question, but
Sorry, I didn't mean to make it a
but
loaded.
but no, that's fine. That's what makes these interesting. But to answer the first part though, I I think I'm realizing that for people, this band's really representative of the time. Um, really representative of this like MySpace metalcore and deathcore time where like bands were your peers, like they were like kids the same age as you,
Yeah.
experiencing some success, um, and just playing wild, like crazy DIY, high energy shows and stuff. And I think one thing that helps us with being really representative of that time is that we never experienced like the large success that the other bands did. So like some other big releases from that time that to me, I think of when I think of it is like Suicide Silence, Family Guy demo, right?
Yeah.
Job for a Cowboy, Doom.
Yep.
Now, when you compare Elysia to that, those bands are fucking huge, got huge, right? And we didn't, and we remained more like obscure. Um, and at the time, like 2006, 2005, and stuff, like none of us were big. And so I think what we're kind of seeing is that Elesia is more of like yeah, just more of like a representative like memory of that time, because
Yeah.
we don't have this period where we were like fucking huge. That kind of like paints over that memory. Um, that's something I'm seeing. And then the second part, did we accomplish everything like we wanted to? Probably probably not. I don't think so. I think we wanted to do more after Line of Judas with that sound.
I
When
can
I listen
imagine.
to that record now, yeah, I'm kind of like, damn, there's like a better version of this album that could have been made. Um, because that's like our first foray into writing songs like that.
Yeah.
Usually it takes a couple times to like perfect that. And so I would have loved to have done another like Line of Jesus album.
I think
Yeah.
that's something a lot of people kind of forget is like with how young you guys were, your tastes were always going to evolve and change. So it would have bled into the band and what you wanted to write, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
Because of that weird like underground, I don't know if hype is the right word, man. But the underground like momentum that you guys had, like people got too stuck to this one way that you sounded. And we're like, no,
Yeah.
that's they need to sound forever. Like we want that, and that's pretty unfair to you guys. And but also like the fact that you wrote a record that you wanted to write, I'm all for that, man. All day. I want bands to write what they want to fucking write, not cater to what people want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that would be like the biggest reason why it just sounds like that. It's because
Yeah,
it's like, well, that's what we liked. And
yeah,
like the members were different. And um and not only was that what we liked, but we really didn't like the that old style anymore. Like you said, we were young, so our tastes had evolved. And like I said earlier, you should always make a band with the objective of like creating your favorite band. Um, and if we had made a deathcore album, it that's not what that would have been for me and for us. Some bands make that choice though, where they're like, this is going to be a career for us.
yeah.
Um, but we really didn't have that temptation because we had never gotten a taste of that life. Like we had never done anything like big enough
Mm.
to see like, oh, if we keep making deathcore, even if we don't like it, we could at least like make money and tour in buses and shit like that. Um, so that choice was easy. You know,
Yeah.
it was easy to make the choice to do what we want as opposed to like be like, oh, I'm going to make this career choice to to create music that people like that I don't care about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I appreciate that, just that candidness of like we made these conscious decisions and like there's nobody really no outside influences. It's just what we wanted to do. And like I don't know,
Yeah,
I feel like you don't hear that enough from bands because it's usually just like, oh yeah, man, like we totally wanted to write this album. I'm like, did you though?
I
Did you?
know. Yeah, yeah. I'm always I'll like there's been releases where you're like side-eyeing it like that
Yeah.
for sure. Like when a lot of the deathcore bands that got big started doing like new metal deathcore,
Yep.
I'm like, damn, is that what you like, or is that you trying to like commercialize deathcore and make it more accessible and become like arena size? It's just hard to imagine that you've been writing like death metal riffs,
Yeah.
listening to fucking Suffocation and shit like that, Hate Eternal, Cannibal Corpse, and then now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I actually think fucking corn riffs are sick, and I maybe you do, but I think a lot of those bands are just jumping on what they saw as like an opportunity, a career opportunity,
Yeah.
which is fine. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. No.
it's fine to be a career musician.
I mean, I'm
It's,
not going to
you
name
know,
names, but there's a few bands in the current era of bands where I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing here. I don't
mhm.
uh listen to them personally, but it's like that's their choice. Fuck it, they're the one making music, not me. So
Yeah, and we can always choose to listen or not.
right, right,
You know, another thing I will say that was like a big contributor to
yeah,
not playing deathcore was like losing Alex. That was our like death metal guy. You
yeah,
know, and I felt like I no one could like he had like a magic to what he did. Um, and there was like this scratch track we wrote that was like if we were writing a Masochist song now, and it just sounded like a cover. Like it wasn't like up to snuff, you know.
mhm.
And I just felt like anyone I brought in would have been doing a bad cover of Alex. You know,
I mean that's
he's always been like a really magical musician, and like him and I made music more recently in like 2017.
oh
Um,
nice.
yeah, we did this like blackened like doom band, and
That's fucking rad. I love
and
that.
I, it's like I look at it so fondly, and I'm just like, fuck, dude, Alex is like has that he has something special. I wish he like made more just himself, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a hard part about losing members, man. It's like sometimes you have such a unique guitar player or drummer or whatever, and like they are like the linchpin that makes the band sound like the band. And when they go, it's
Yeah,
like honestly, if they lost you as a vocalist, the band wouldn't have sounded the same either. Like because you also have a unique vocal style that was unlike a lot of bands at that time either. It would have been like, man, this ain't the same band.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I felt about losing Alex. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the kind of final thing I want to close with here. So I mean, here we are, 18 years later. I mean, did you think you'd still be talking about the band when you kind of decided to call it quits as long ago as you did, man? But obviously, people like me still care. You
Yeah.
know, we're here for it. Like, did you think that this would be a thing that would follow you? And maybe not speaking for the other members so much, but also a little bit like, do they kind of feel the same way? You know?
No, I don't think I ever thought it would follow me, and it would be 18 years still talking about it. Um, especially because there was a period where there was really like no talk of it. It had really like died off. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't bring it up if I was like meeting new people. Um, no one ever like recognized me like it or anything like that. So there was like a this period of like 5 years or so where it seemed like just totally in the past. Um, so that part is like super crazy. Yeah, for sure. I think it just kind of goes to show how much of a resurgence and like interest there is
Yeah.
now in like all subgenres of like aggressive music. And like I think that's super sick.
Yeah, and I think also speaking just people my age, like the people that kind of grew up listening to it, um, seeing that you guys are doing a reissue, it's like, oh, thank fuck, finally we have a spot to listen to it that isn't some shitty like YouTube rip of the album, or like I can buy a record again and it doesn't
Yeah.
cost an arm and a leg. So it's really awesome to see, man. I'm really glad that you decided to like persevere and like do the reissue and everything. So.
Yeah,
Um,
tight.
it's and also just talking about the history of the band, man. That's part of why I love doing this. I love hearing about all that stuff over the time and researching, and I don't want people to forget about the bands that helped shape, because like in my opinion, I think you guys shaped a lot of the deathcore that came out after you. Whether people want to admit that or not, that's up to them, but
Mm.
I think you guys are a huge part of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, man. It's cool to hear. It's
Yeah.
definitely been it's definitely been fun. I think that has a lot to do with like why I'm doing it now. Is it just sounded fun again for kind of the first time, and it's been it's been a blast. Yeah.
So where can people listening or watching this go, or if there's anything left to buy,
Mhm.
where can
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
There are still CDs.
Okay.
Yeah, you could just find it. It's on Indie Merch has it, and then Tribunal's just web store has it. And we do have like links in our social media bios for that. And they'll be out on May 10th on like all the streamers. I keep having to reiterate that for Apple users. I can't just say Spotify, otherwise like the Apple folks freak out.
I know, man. It's a weird thing for me too, because like the main place that I get listeners is on Spotify, but like it started out with iTunes and Apple, and now it's like, I mean, Apple and iTunes users too. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah, so May 10th, that's when everything comes out as far as streaming. If you didn't get to buy anything else, sorry, have fun on the secondary market where I'm sure some people are going to price gouge the fuck out of some of these
Yeah,
albums.
and like I said, we just want to be like accessible to folks. If that, I'll keep an eye on that. If that, and Secret Swarm will keep an eye on that. If that gets like just fucking stupid,
It really does.
we're fine with just like making more. So letting people know that's a possibility. And that also a possibility, although there's a little kind of like legality things we have to figure out.
Yeah.
There is a possibility that we do Line of Judas on vinyl reissued. And we would probably also do like a merch run with that, because that's another thing that's like not available now that people are have asked me about. And I'm like, if we do Line Juice, we'll do one, and then that's it.
Well, Zach, man, thank you. Seriously, man, thank you for taking the time. You know, I honestly thought like maybe you wouldn't want to really keep harping on about this like after all these years, but I really do appreciate you taking the time, man. Seriously.
Yeah, it's fun, man. So really appreciate you having me on.